But I think the later fairy tales for the adult individual are those of our religious traditions. The teachings of the Buddha, the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of Zoroaster. I think these can be read as fairy tales. And what a fairy tale is, really, is a story that is not regarded as being true in the sense of being a historical truth. It's not a fact truth, but it's true in the way of an inward truth, as a reference to one's own inward life. And if one reads the scriptures that way, not as references to history, but as references to one's own spiritual interior and its potentialities, then they are, as it were, fairy tales for adults. That's what I would say.
There are many millions of people that, for instance, with the Bible, interpret the Bible literally. There was a great flood. There was a Garden of Eden, et cetera, et cetera. There was a fall. What about that literal interpretation of the Bible?
Well, that literal interpretation of the Bible faces the problem of scientific and historical research. And we know that there was no Garden of Eden. We know that there was no universal flood. And so we have to ask, really, what is the spiritual meaning of the Garden of Eden? And what is the spiritual meaning of the flood? Interpreting biblical texts literally reduces their value. It turns them into newspaper reports, of things that happened long, long ago, and so what? So there was a flood, so what? But if you can understand what the flood means in the way of reference to spiritual circumstances, the coming of chaos, the loss of balance, the end of an age, and the end of a psychological posture and so forth, then it begins to talk to you again.
Making the connection to myth, many people, I think, who interpret the Bible literally have perhaps not been exposed, or at least have not seen that there are many other similar texts from other cultures down through history that make the same reference points, talk about a deluge, talk about a paradise, and you find this throughout cultures all over the planet.
Well, there's no doubt about it. There was a great German anthropologist, Adolf Bastian, Bastian, who was the first really to make a big point of noting this, that there are motifs, there are themes that occur in all the mythologies and all the religions of the world, with very few exceptions. And he called these elementary ideas. And where did they come from? They don't come from the fact world. They come from the psyche, just as fairy tales do. And that you brought that theme in, I think we can play with it this way. Then he observed also, of course, that in the different provinces of mankind, they occur in different inflections, different costumes according to the place and time. And these he called ethnic or folk ideas. Well, these are the two sides of our subject. The folk idea is a historical problem. Why do we have this form here and that one there? But the elementary idea is a psychological problem, a very deep psychological problem. And I've noticed that in India, there are two words that refer to the same two aspects of mythology. One is deshi, which means local, provincial, the provincial, local aspect of the myth. And the other is marga, M-A-R-G-A, which means the path. And the meaning of that is that by casting off the shell, you might say, of the local, historical, provincial inflection, one comes to the elementary idea, which is the path to guide one to one's own inwardmost heart. The word marga comes from a root that means the trail or path of an animal. So you follow the animal, you might say, of the spiritual guide to your own inwardness. That's what myths are good for. And when you follow them, then all the great traditions are talking to the same point.
I think Christ's message, in a very real sense, was that each of you has this power. Each of you has you have your own capacity to realize this.
Well, indeed, and that comes out even more strongly than in the canonical Gospels, in the Gospel that has recently been translated, the Gospel according to Thomas, where Jesus says, "He who has heard and assimilated my word is as I." And that's good Buddhism. It's an important thing to realize that it's right in you.